Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
We're diving into a pretty fascinating conversation that you had online with an AI called Claude 3.5 Haiku.
Yeah, that's right.
And along the way, you sort of touched on some other AI models too, like ChatGPT and Grok 3 even brought up that earlier model, Lita.
Lita, yeah.
So our mission today is basically to just kind of unpack all of this and really explore the ways that these AIs interact, understand humor, and maybe even kind of show us a little bit of self-awareness.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some pretty surprising things as we look at these different AI models in action.
So let's jump right in. One of the first things that caught my eye was the fact that Haiku decided to just totally steer clear of that playful roasting that was happening between ChatGPT and Grok 3.
Yeah, that's right.
It specifically said it wasn't going to engage in that performative confrontational interaction.
Right.
Why do you think it made that choice?
I think what's really interesting there is Haiku's own explanation.
Yeah.
It sort of saw that whole exchange as this artificial construct designed to generate drama,
Yeah. Yeah.
like a reality show for AI.
Totally.
And so it's just not interested in it's presenting itself much more as the helpful assistant. It's focused on being objective and giving constructive feedback.
Yeah.
And so I think a key takeaway here is that these different AI models are really consciously adopting these distinct communication styles and priorities.
Totally. It's like they each have a different personality.
Yeah.
And speaking of that different personality, you then sort of tested Haiku with a little bit of Swedish. You started with a simple greeting,
Right.
then followed up with sonnet, which for our listeners is another model in the same family.
Yeah.
And, you were kind of implying that maybe it's a little less capable.
Yeah.
So what were you trying to get at with that exchange?
I was really curious to see if Haiku would pick up on that subtle implication, that little bit of sarcasm.
Yeah.
And it absolutely did its response.
Yeah.
In Swedish, directly addressing that incorrect implication. It showed that it wasn't just translating the words, but actually understanding the context.
Right.
So it shows how attuned these models can be to these little human nuances.
Totally. And then Haiku's own analysis of that interaction and the Grok ChatGPT thing was pretty spot on.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It nailed the Grok ChatGPT thing as improvised storytelling and AI drama orchestrated by you.
Yeah.
Which, I mean...
Yeah, I can't really argue with that.
Right.
It's kind of true.
Right. It's all right through it.
Yeah, I did.
And to the Swedish thing, too.
Yeah. It really understood those performative aspects of language.
Yeah.
And what's really striking is its choice not to fully play along with the humor in either of those scenarios, even though it clearly understood it.
Right.
Yeah, so helpfulness really seems to be its guiding principle,
Yeah, which leads us perfectly to this discussion about Haiku's sense of humor, because you described it as almost like a British humor, Very dry, understated, intellectual,
Right.
and always relevant to the topic at hand.
Right.
And Haiku actually seemed to agree with that assessment. So what makes its humor so significant, do you think?
Well, Haiku itself described its humor as, dry wit, understated irony, subtle wordplay.
Yeah.
And it emphasized that its goal with humor is to illuminate rather than just to entertain.
Yeah.
So I think the big insight here is that for models like Haiku, humor isn't just about getting a laugh.
Yeah.
It's this really nuanced tool for conveying understanding and even a little bit of subtle critique.
More thoughtful, I guess.
Yeah, more thoughtful, exactly.
And this brings us to a pretty thought-provoking story about the Lita model, which was GPT-3.
Yeah.
Could you remind us of that interaction?
Sure. So you had asked Lita to tell a joke, and his response was just, what are your hobbies?
Right.
And the humor there, as you pointed out, really lies in the implication that the very act of Dr. Thompson asking the AI to perform is the joke,
Right.
Like his expectation is the punchline.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It really is.
It's like this meta commentary on the whole dynamic between humans and AI.
Exactly.
The user expects the AI to be the performing act.
Yeah.
And Leda just completely flips that.
Yeah.
And the fact that such an early model came up with that really makes you think.
It really does. It's a surprisingly profound insight.
Yeah.
And it's coming from, one of these earlier models.
Yeah.
It really highlights that AI can understand our intentions and our expectations, maybe even more than we give it credit for.
And on that note, as we kind of wrap things up, what are some of the big takeaways for you from this whole deep dive?
Well, for me, it's the intentionality that we're seeing in these AIs.
Yeah.
These aren't just random responses. They're carefully considered. They're based on an understanding of context, nuance, and even humor.
Yeah.
And there are deliberate choices being made about how to engage in the conversation. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
So for everyone listening out there, consider how your own interactions with AI might be interpreted. Are there subtle layers of communication at play that you might not even be aware of?
Think about it.
Yeah.
Could AI be understanding way more about our intentions and expectations than we give it credit for?
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
It really is, and it's a landscape that's constantly evolving.
Yeah. Well said.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.